Zeb's
And
muted.
happy Wednesday to the world out there. And shout out to Matt checking us out on the Twitch chat, talking about DoorDash and McDonald's and paying someone $10 for some Panera. Gentlemen, how's it going? Happy Seahawks, happy Hawkscast.net podcast, happy NFL season, everybody.
It's arrived. We're here. I'm ready.
You ready? I mean, you know, the one thing is I'm a little disappointed we don't have a double header for Sunday and Monday night this year. It's kind of disappointing.
No double header. Yeah, they've been doing that on opening Mondays recently, right? Is that what I'm remembering?
Yeah, I kind of feel like opening weekend they just like packed as many games into primetime as possible, except for the Thursday night game.
But this year it's just like a regular weekend.
Yeah, there must be something in the air where they're like, you know what, we're going to just keep it simple, classy, and just one game each, you know? But yeah.
And fingers crossed that things just don't go terrible.
Yeah, right. Thursday night opener tomorrow with the Bucks and the Cowboys. It's the hope is nothing crazy happens. That's like the NFL's goal.
Exactly.
And it is in Florida, so we'll see if that's if that will hold true or not. But yeah.
Florida.
Zeb, Ross, how's it going, guys?
Watch out for Florida, man.
Yeah, you guys ready for some football? Are you? How much football are you going to watch this weekend? Let's kind of start with that because real football is here. Meaningful football is finally here.
All of it. All the football is being watched.
I mean, I assume I'll be up all night. The earliest games will start at 2 a.m. here. The first round of games start at 2 a.m. and they go to like 10 a.m. Somewhere in there, I'm going to have to like get some sleep because I have dodgeball Monday night. But
And we play early, right? We play the early game Sunday?
Yeah, we play the early game because it's in Indy, so it's a 10 a.m. game, which again, you know, I think there are still some Seahawks PTSD out there that like, oh man, the early game, we're so bad. But this is what, Pete Carroll's 10th year now? 9th year now?
No, I feel like we're good at 10 a.m. now.
I know, that's the thing. Like, Pete Carroll, like, this entire time, like, that's never been an issue. So, like, I think just old-time Seahawk fans still think that 10 a.m. games are all of a sudden like an additional 3 points that they have to overcome every game.
it just shows you how bad it was during the homegrown years that literally 10, 11 years later, we're still, like, dreading those games, even though we're good at them now, right?
Yeah.
I just don't like getting up that early. But I live a different kind of lifestyle, so it's harder for me.
Zeb, you're almost nocturnal.
Yeah, kind of, pretty much.
Ross isn't nocturnal, but he's in a different time zone, so he makes up for it in other ways.
He's forced to be nocturnal
But, yeah.
to watch.
But gentlemen, I'm happy
It just gets
we're here.
It just gets awkward.
It does get awkward. I mean, you know, you're trying to get like a McDonald's breakfast sandwich at 3 p.m, and they just look at you like, dude, you're like 10 hours too late.
Oh.
But here we are. The 2021 offseason is finally over as the NFL and the Seattle Seahawks are here to kick off the regular season. We have football all weekend, and the Seahawks are traveling to Indy to face the Carson Wentz Colts. It's kind of weird to think about. People have stopped their hold-ins. We have a full team ready to practice and hit the field. The cornerback room is still shuffling, but the Hawkscast.net podcast is here to help maintain order. Gentlemen, I am so excited to be here. I'm so excited to talk about the Seahawks. There's a lot that we have to talk about. I mean, we didn't have a podcast after that last preseason game, but we finally saw some offense, and it all came from the second team, which is really, really nice to see.
That finally, that game felt good. It was an enjoyable game to watch, and you know, again, like as you said, even though it was all second teamers and backups and third stringers and whatnot, it was good to see them play some quality football. It felt so much better than those first two games.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to think about it because that game, it was a shutout. Like, obviously the Chargers didn't play anyone of really, really note, but Geno Smith played well. The offensive line seemed to hold up. The running game, though, I felt was definitely like very miss. There was not a lot to be excited for in that running game in that last preseason game.
No.
But yeah.
We need our man. We need our man back.
It is going to be weird seeing basically an entire team that we haven't seen all preseason long just kind of hit the field running versus last year where there was no preseason and we just saw the team like come from the shadows and like roll off 5 wins in a row.
Yeah. That was last year was weird for so many different reasons, but it was weird. It was a weird looking Seahawks team. We hadn't seen that before, and it was kind of shocking. Even though we all kind of expected offense, I think, but I don't know that we all expected it to work as well as it did at first.
Yeah, I feel that there was less unknowns going into the 2020 season versus this year, where there's a ton of unknowns.
Yeah, I suppose. I don't know. It was weird last year because we didn't see anything. So in that sense, it was all unknown. But yeah, there wasn't a lot of question about who was going to be playing where, and all the positions were filled for the most part. So,
I mean, last year you returned your coordinators, you returned almost everybody key. Wide receivers 1 through 3 because of injury to what's his name. They ended up being the same. It was mostly kind of the really similar people, and then you knew that certain people who were new just weren't going to play because there hadn't been much, off season or any at all.
Right.
This year, new offensive coordinator. They've brought in Gabe Jackson. You don't know how that dude's going to do. You don't know how. I mean, your RB3 has not even played a down of football yet. So there's a lot, right? Brand new potential cornerbacks.
Yeah, who knows who's playing cornerback?
Yeah, I'm afraid of the answer, actually.
Yeah, it is. It's going to be interesting, but you know what? Well, let's actually jump into topic number 1 because topic number 1, we're pretty much talking about it right now. And Ross, I want to hit you off first. What's the biggest unknown heading into the regular season?
I think the biggest unknown overall is probably what the offense is going to look like. But I mean, Pete Carroll has his own ideas, and we saw with the last coordinator, like they contribute as well, but they have to fit the overall philosophy. So, how much are we going to look like the Rams offense? How much of there's going to be are we going to be heavy with jet sweeps and lots of motion and whatnot and tight end emphasis and things like that, or are we going to look like what we looked before with just a few wrinkles, or is it the opposite way? Or I mean, are we how much are we still going to go deep, because the Rams didn't go deep a heck of a lot, but I think some of that's probably on Goff. So if Shane comes in running sort of what they ran with the Rams, but it wasn't his, it was McVay's. So basically when Shane gets to do what he wants to do, plus with Pete's input, what is it going to look like? Hopefully, and I think we saw this, the one thing that's not a mystery, one thing we were able to see with the second team offense is they do seem to get to the line of scrimmage a lot faster. They were usually getting to the line of scrimmage, I thought, with 15 to 18 seconds left. So time to audible, time to adjust, time to motion, time to double motion. But overall, I think the biggest question is, what is that offense going to look like?
But that was all that tempo that everyone had been talking about all preseason long. It's like, oh, Seahawks are running tempo, which is not the same as a hurry-up offense. Did you feel as if they demonstrated what that tempo is going to look like? I kind of have a hard time imagining it, just because we might as well have not seen anything, because we. Don't know what we're gonna see.
If you don't have. It was a bizarre. I don't know, man. Like some sort of weird consensus was reached in the NFL this year. And you can't show anything and play anybody in the preseason anymore. Like I was listening to Mike Salk, and he reminded yesterday that he's back on 7:10 a.m. and he was talking about. Do you remember back in the day in the preseason, like Earl Thomas returned punts in the preseason?
I remember Earl Thomas like not fair catching a punt and then got quickly demoted from punt return duties.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, but I mean, like Earl Thomas, like your second most important player on the team, is back there returning punts in preseason, And now, like, apparently, like, Phil Haynes is too like second string, third string guard on his way to getting cut is too important to play in the preseason now. There's been a sea change, hardcore, in that the preseason symbolizes for teams now, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's hard to know exactly what the tempo is going to look like. I think there were some clues watching, especially Geno Smith run the offense. There's some clues there, I think. Geno Smith's also been around with the Seahawks at least for a while. Everybody's new for the offense, but and he's a veteran guy. And like I said, he was getting people to the line a lot faster. The huddles were breaking fast. So there's a lot of that. Substitutions, maybe even like some emphasis on getting those in and out faster. Other than that, we'll see. But we know that there are a lot of signs as well that I didn't mention earlier. There's a lot of signs that it's not just going to be Shane's offense. It's more going to be Shane and Russ's offense, because it looks like Russ is getting input. Not like Aaron Rodgers. Like, Aaron Rodgers made some certain demands. He's going overboard. He's like, I want that wide receiver from 4 years ago back now. Russ isn't doing that, but he's getting a lot of his way. So, and he likes high tempo, I think. The other side of that, though, of course, that's not necessarily a good thing. The offense sometimes looks better at that, but if you don't have the defense, you're talking about putting your defense out a lot of the games. So we'll see how that works out.
Zeb,
that's what I worry about.
Zeb, what about you? What do you think is the biggest unknown heading into this regular season? Like,
well, I agree with Ross that I think what the offense is going to look like is the biggest unknown, just because we have seen nothing. But then at the same time, we're bringing back most of the same guys that we know can play, and we trust them to be able to play well for the most part. So I think we're pretty safe in that regard. So I'm going to go with the defense, because you remember last year, as good as the offense came out playing, the defense came out playing equally as bad. And it took them a long time to kind of come together as a group, where towards the end of the season, this wasn't the Legion of Boom by any means, but they definitely tightened up and got better as the year went on. And with some of the unknowns, especially at cornerback, and there's going to be somebody new starting at linebacker, and the new defensive line's been fairly overhauled. I think, especially thinking about our sort of frustration with Ken Norton Jr. last year and his ability to coach this defense, to run this defense. To me, that's where the unknowns are. Like, I don't know, when this defense was playing badly last year, who was necessarily at fault. It seems like we have really good guys and really good athletes at a lot of positions, but it just wasn't really working. And I'm hoping that this year that comes together a little bit faster. It would make me much more comfortable to see a more consistent defense to come out. And I don't know. I have no idea if that's what we're going to see or not.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think for me, the biggest unknown heading into the regular season a week ago was, like, who's going to play left tackle? That got resolved. The Seahawks and Dwayne Brown said very amicable things, and Dwayne Brown's getting some extra protection if he gets injured going into next year, which is great because he's practicing. Quandre Diggs, he didn't get any deal, but he's back at practice, so there's situations that obviously were of some concern. To me, I'm going to go drop down a little bit, and I'm going to say the biggest unknown going into the regular season is the running game. Chris Carson got re-signed. I was personally surprised that we were able to retain him. It's a very favorable deal for a running back, but it's for a running back that can't stay healthy. Every single of the running backs that we have on the roster, only one of them has not missed significant time, and that's rookie DJ Dallas, who's now in his second year. But Alex Collins, he got cut a couple years after he got signed. Rashad Penny hasn't had a full year. Travis Homer has been injured. Chris Carson's been injured. So there's a ton of guys that we know we're familiar with, but I don't know what that running game is going to look like, because outside of Alex Collins playing well in that second preseason game, I have no clue what a Shane Waldron, running game based offense is going to look like and how the running backs are going to be utilized, I'm a little concerned because I feel as the team that we're going to face, and we'll talk about the Chargers a little bit later, but I feel like the team that we're going to face, they have a pretty plus defense, and I'm worried that if we can't run the ball at all and we're just going to be throwing the ball, that unknown of what that running game looks like, of a dominant style running attack, which I think really complements Russell Wilson, if we don't see that, I think that's, for me, one of my bigger concerns of what can I expect.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think Carson, to me, looks as determined as he ever has to come in and be that guy. Obviously, he's had the injury issues. There's nothing you can do to change that. But I agree with you. I think it's very important. If he isn't able to stay healthy this season, we have a lot of question marks behind him. So I think you're 100% right.
I mean, Alex Collins showed a lot, and he showed some speed and some burst he didn't even have his first time around. He's got 1,000-yard season before. I mean, like, obviously it's a couple years removed, but that's opportunity. I'm actually feeling pretty good. I mean, I have questions about the people supposed to open up the holes. I'm really nervous more like about the center position. And should we talk about Gabe Jackson? I mean,
we could talk, but we got a topic that we could talk about, the roster construct. So
let's do that later on. But like, just saying, like, Gabe Jackson, like we made a big deal. Like Russell threw the offensive line under the bus. Oh well, they addressed the offensive line. Did they? Like, they brought in Gabe Jackson.
Yeah. All right.
We'll talk about it.
Yeah. So topic number 2, Ross. I'm gonna hit you. Did you go first? Wait, I can't remember.
I went first last time.
Okay, so Zeb, topic number 2. Did the front office put together a roster capable of competing in the NFC West?
Certainly hope so.
Fingers crossed, right?
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like I'm comfortable with the offensive line, I think. I feel like I think we got a lot of quality depth there, and I think we're going to be okay. You know, I don't have any specific to support that, but that's how I feel about it. Yeah, no, I but like I was talking about in the last topic, I think cornerback is a huge question mark. And even safety, like, we know our safeties are good, but how are they going to be used? I think there's a lot to that still remains to be seen how this is all going to work. And so, yeah, it is a little bit scary because I do feel like that not that the Niners and Cardinals and Rams have necessarily improved that much over the offseason, but that they were already in pretty good shape. So I think, like we said, this is, if not the toughest division in the league, it's definitely one of the toughest divisions in the league. So it would be definitely disappointing to feel like we're not keeping up with the other teams. But I have faith. I think we did. You know, they obviously made a lot of changes. Whether they're positive changes or not remains to be seen. But I feel good about where we're at going into the season.
Ross, what about you? You were about to go into the roster construct, and is this roster capable of competing in the NFC West?
I mean, we're capable of competing anytime we've got, like, Russell Wilson on a team, right? And Bobby Wagner's still anchoring the defense. So, I mean, not that that meant... I mean, last year we were historically bad at this beginning of the season. But it's the NFL. Anytime you've got Russell Wilson, you're going to compete. I do think they've constructed the offense with a couple of assumptions on the optimistic side. I mean, I see why they made some of the choices, and if it works out, that's great. And I see a path towards, like, almost like domination. But I also see a path that's pretty clear to me that some of these moves might not work, and the roster we've put together could fall apart. Like I just mentioned, Gabe Jackson, when you go and look for optimistic appraisals of Gabe Jackson, you can see, oh, I get why they get this guy. But then as soon as you get to anything that's not Seattle or Oakland, well, Las Vegas media, you get a lot of people saying, that guy's like a year left in the league. He's on his way out. There's a lot of voices that say like Oakland / Las Vegas, whatever. I'm never going to get that right. They let him go because that guy's essentially on his way out. He's done. He's on his last legs. And then you look at the defense, and we talked a little bit about this 2 weeks ago, but I wonder, now that you've got Jamal Adams under contract and you're going to want him, if you've put, I talked about this before, if you've got the right tools, to get the most out of Jamal Adams, you got to have the right kind of corners that let him do so you can play around with him. Because he's going to be out of position. You let him freelance. They let him freelance as well. And if that is going to freelance, that means you're putting some corner or even a linebacker who's taking a part of a zone a little bit on a larger island or a big island, or isolated on people that they're not really meant to cover, isolated. And I don't know, like if you want to get the most out of Jamal Adams, you had to upgrade cornerback hard. And the last couple of weeks they've addressed it. Things weren't working out, and they've really gone out and gotten 3 different cornerbacks the past 2 weeks. So maybe that'll be okay, but that seems like that didn't quite work out so far. There's some signs that, and then even like Gerald Everett, like you're assuming he knows the offense because he comes out with Shane, and you're assuming his athletic ability is going to translate into production, but it didn't with the Rams. Now they had a lot of a lot of mouths to feed with few balls, but. Like you're assuming he steps up and become a pretty big player, but he's only ever had 450 yards in a season. You assume he was a second-round draft pick. He's got all the athletic tools, but how many people in the NFL have the measurables but don't have the production? Like that's not a rare thing to happen. So, like I said, I see a clear road to domination if all these things work out. Jamal Adams is like 12 sacks, and Quandre Diggs just like vacuuming things on the backside, shutting down long passes, and 2 new fast linebackers running around, augmenting Bobby and done like a pretty deep defensive line rotation. Like I could see that happening, and I could see Shane coming in, getting all creative on the offense, and Gabe Jackson works out, blocking them, opening holes for Chris and whatnot. And Eskridge just gets it straight out, but that's a rookie wide receiver 3 trying to take a little bit of pressure off your 2 main guys. That's a tight end that's never produced before. That's Gabe Jackson, who a lot of people think is out of the league soon. There's some questions for me.
Sure, and I think that's fair. Really quickly about Gabe Jackson, I feel like the same comment was made about J.R. Sweezy's second time around and DJ Fluker's first time around with Seattle. And both of those guys got contracts, not with Seattle, but they ended up getting contracts somewhere else because Seattle didn't want to pay. So there is hope, I should say. I'm not saying it's a guaranteed, but just because other teams say that this guy is washed or they've only got a year left, the Seahawks are always willing to uncover something that people in the NFL as a whole have been able to see. Not saying they're perfect on that.
The Raiders were just like, we're done with this line. They got rid of 3 out of 5 starters.
Right, and I think that makes sense considering like the beating that their quarterbacks were taking because, I think Mariota played like 4 games last year and their franchise had to play, that's a decision where you kind of decide like we need to retool. And the division that they play in, it's really top heavy. So, I get that. To the overall question, is this front office putting a capable competing roster in the NFC West? I think they have. The question is it enough to win the division? And it's weird that we're talking about a team that went 12-4 last year. We're talking as if they've like barely scratched 8-8, or they're like drafting in the top 10. But expectations for this team are just getting higher and higher and higher. And I feel because of that, like nothing is good enough now. We talked about this at the end of last year. 12-4 means nothing if you lose in the first round. Like it basically just like makes the entire season almost worthless because you have nothing to show for it. People are constantly ribbing, saying like, "Hey, they haven't won 2 playoff games since they've gone to the Super Bowl." So it's been a while. It's been a long time, and I think people, especially Seahawks fans, are getting really tired of that. I always chalk it up to, we're just a little bit spoiled. We want more. We feel we deserve more. And when we're paying a quarterback that much, the front office should demand more. And this is where we've often had disagreements of, can you win without paying your quarterback $35, $40, $50 million, as the salary cap goes up and up and up? And it's such a hard conversation to have because you can be competitive, you can, get further, but it's just harder and harder to do that. And, you look at the quarterbacks that have won outside of Tom Brady, the ones that have won, they've all been on cheaper contracts. So we'll see. That's a conversation for another time, maybe in the offseason, depending on how it goes. But final thoughts on the roster.
Slowly coming around. Sam is slowly coming around.
It's not coming around. I'm just saying that is a valid conversation. No. This is.
You're coming around. You are.
I'm not, because this is what I will always say. Replacing a quarterback in the NFL is incredibly hard. You can get a competent quarterback, but you can't guarantee that competent quarterback is going to be good consistently for year after year. And you can't guarantee that competent quarterback has what it takes to run an offense. What Russell Wilson has done is the best in Seahawk history. And yet there are people out there that would say, like, oh, you know what? I think I'd rather have Matt Hasselbeck because I think, he would cost a little bit less and we'd have more money. But that's not true, because in this current NFL, quarterbacks get so much money, they demand that salary. So even if you get like a B-level quarterback, you're still paying them $20 to $25 million. It's
which means 4 extra skill players. Like, Russell Wilson's costing us more than any other quarterback this year. And incidentally, we couldn't afford to get a cornerback. Oh, by the way.
I
Just say it, man.
I understand the point that you're trying to make, and I don't want to get too derailed because we could go about this topic for like ever and ever and ever.
Yeah.
But we're talking about, in this particular case, Russell Wilson costing us $35 million a year versus a hypothetical quarterback that we don't have at $25 million.
Yeah, I think we'll save it for another day, man. We'll get into it again.
But that's always going to be my point. There is not an heir apparent to what Russell Wilson is.
Again, I don't want to be too harsh, but what you're saying is like there's only one way to build an NFL roster.
No. I'm saying about this team specifically. Specifically right now in 2021.
Okay, for example, if you run the ball 55% of the time, that's 55% of the time your quarterback's not involved. So there's another road. You can go with a rookie quarterback who's decent. You can go with... I think this team, we'll go. We'll let it go.
Birdfinger's egging you on. He's telling fight the good fight, Ross. But we're gonna
and I
calm
do
down.
Say
And
I don't think that I don't want to.
I'll let you have a final word. But I am gonna cut you short if you go beyond 5 minutes.
I'm not gonna go 5 minutes, man. I'm just gonna go 30 seconds. I'm not saying that I don't think Russell Wilson's a good quarterback. I'm not even saying it's absolutely impossible to go back to a Super Bowl paying your quarterback $35 million under, as a percentage, whatever the percentage is this time. I'm just saying that there is another way to. There's no. It's a NFL. The game of American football is a very, very complex sport, and there's no complex systems where there's only one correct way to go. And like I said, a couple teams proved. I thought it was going to go the other way a couple of years ago. A couple teams really, really proved you can go deep in the playoffs with your second, your third string quarterback, whatever. And I thought that was going to be a lesson the teams learned, and nobody did. The closest we thought McVay being young and kind of secure, he might do it because we knew he was going to let Goff go, who was like borderline. At least he was like a B or B minus quarterback.
Look at what they did. They pulled the trigger 2 years too late.
But yeah, exactly. And instead of just like cutting ties and going, we're going all in, we trust ourselves to find another quarterback, we're going to build the other way and keep our defense intact. They wouldn't cut Matt Stafford instead, and that's another dumb move. Sorry. I believe in Stafford. He's a great fantasy quarterback, but he's never going to win a Super Bowl. He's not that type.
Matt Stafford's never won a playoff game. It's not
Well, I
entirely
mean,
his
you can't
fault.
blame him up to this point.
It's
He's
not-
played for Detroit Lions his whole life. I mean, Jesus.
Yeah, but we're living in the reality that he has not won a playoff game in his career, playing for a terrible franchise, which is the Detroit Lions.
I mean, like, yeah, there's a plenty. I mean, back in the day when you couldn't move around, there was a ton of quarterbacks who never won playoff games in their entire career because, like Archie Manning, people like the young people complete like Peyton Manning's dad for you young folks out there. Archie Manning was a really, really good quarterback, one of the best quarterbacks in the game, and he never even played in a playoff game because that was before free agency, and he was stuck on the Saints for his whole career. When the Saints fans wore bags over the head to games, literally.
Yeah.
So, I mean, playoff wins isn't always the measure, right? Anyway,
it's not.
Moving on. Sorry
But
to derail. Sorry to get on my soapbox.
But the overall point that I will get my last word and then we'll move on.
Please do.
Part of the reason why the Seahawks are going to be competitive is because they have Russell Wilson at the quarterback. Regardless of the cost, regardless of how much of the cap he takes, regardless of your opinions about him and his actions, his irritations, whatever, he is a big driver of why the Seahawks have been able to be so competitive over the last decade.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think it's well known. As long as you have a top 5 quarterback, you're always going to be competitive. But I mean, how many MVPs has Aaron Rodgers won, and like how many Super Bowls has he played in? Because after the first one, he wasn't getting paid cheaply anymore.
Yeah,
Right?
but to Aaron Rodgers' credit, he's at least been to multiple NFC championships. He's just lost a ton of them, more than Russell Wilson.
Exactly. So I mean, like, it's and that's almost the point. Like, if Aaron Rodgers was making $10 million less, and that $10 million was being put on defense, the last time they played is in the NFC Championship with the Packers have gone to the Super Bowl. Should a quarterback take less money, knowing that the fame will eventually pay itself off? If you have the fame of a 2 or 3 time Super Bowl winner, how many more commercial endorsements are you going to get? How many more business opportunities are you going to get? I think, I've said this before, I think sports agents need to be the overall agents for a player so they can make smarter decisions. You see players moving teams into backfires, they end up, they get the bigger contract, but they don't live out the life of it. You get paid less overall. You got to be smart. Stay in one city so you get the local endorsements, you become the local hero. You get a lot more advertising money long term. You get all sorts of business opportunities, and that $10 million or $5 million you left on the table at 1 year in your career will come back if you're a quarterback, especially. Thank you to my TED Talk.
All right. Well, let's move on to topic number 3. All right. So topic number 3, Hawkscast Corner. So go to the forum. It is hawkscast.net, the sponsor of our podcast, the hawkscast.net podcast. And the question is, did the Seahawks make the right decision with requiring vaccines at Lumen Field? So for those of you that aren't paying attention, earlier this week, the Seahawks, the Kraken, the Sounders, the Storm, the Huskies, the Cougs have all announced that in order to attend games at their stadium or arena, you will have to show your COVID vaccine card, a authorized app, or some kind of authorization to allow you into the stadium arena. The Mariners have done the same thing, but they're not going to implement this until mid-October, which is when the playoffs would be, and they are not going to make the playoffs. So, Ross, did the Seahawks make the right decision on doing this?
Yeah. I mean, man, really, we're going to get that political right now? Yeah. I mean, I think you have to for a lot of reasons. And they have the full right to it. It's a private enterprise. I mean, you can get into the whole, the city funded the stadium partly, but I mean, to be honest, it's a social disease. People it's privacy, until the modern era of social media, whatever, and like epidemics and pandemics were always treated the same without any doubt. There's no government overreach. We're not we all weren't wearing masks since the 1919 Spanish flu episode. These do get rolled back. It literally is just for your health, people. And it's even if you don't consider the disease this bad, we still have to beat the disease and beat it somewhat down because you're waiting for other mutations to come around. Eventually, we're going to reach an equilibrium. Until we get to that point, we have to be smart. I mean, I heard people saying even things like, well, even if the athletes do get sick, it's, they're in really good shape and whatnot and blah, blah, blah. But, I mean, at least 2 NFL players lost their season last year because they got sick from it. Like, young men in prime condition even are not immune to long COVID. They're not immune to whatever. I mean, and so people in the stands, like, you're just putting 65,000 people in some stadiums in an enclosed environment. It's just not, again, I mean, I'm living in Japan. I know I bring it up way too often, but I'm living in Japan. And for me, it's just a very, very awkward, it's a weird conversation to have. I don't understand why Americans don't take public safety as just like as a matter of fact, do it in due course kind of thing. I don't understand it. I've been here for too long, I guess. I've been over here for 25 years now. And when you've got a disease spreading through society, then you take measures to stop the disease. This isn't like diabetes or cancer. If you don't want to get treated, you don't have to get treated. That's fine. That's you. Cancer doesn't spread to the next person, the next person, the next person. Communicable diseases have always been treated this way. From ancient Rome to ancient China, ancient anywhere. You quarantine people, and then once things became other options be available, you use all of the options available because you don't let diseases spread easily through society. It's common sense. And sorry, I don't understand what's happening in America anymore. I don't understand how a disease is political. I don't. You can say it doesn't kill that high rate, but it randomly does. And you know what, if there was even a 1% chance of you dying every time you got in a car, you would never get in a car. So, yeah, you know what? Of course stadiums should do this. And I think the Kraken have, as I understand it, the Kraken are a little bit stricter. You can't just show a negative test for COVID. You actually have to have vaccines, right?
Yeah, so the Kraken actually have an additional measure where that if you have a medical or religious reason, you have to prove it, and then you only have a 48-hour window negative test to be entered into the arena for a concert or for a game. So
they do 48 hours for them. That's a little I get why they do 48 instead of 72. But the way that works sometimes, I think they have, for practical reasons, I think 72. Again, I get why, because things can emerge after, of course. And that's how this keeps spreading. But there's a practical matter. You go to the test, you get it, and then you go pick it up the next day. And if your timing doesn't work exactly right, you're not going to make the 48-hour window.
I think that's why the Kraken are going a little bit heavier. I'll talk a little bit more. Zeb, what about you? We've talked about what is your comfort level going to the game. Ross lives overseas, so it's a different question for him. I am not planning on attending any live games. I gave away my preseason tickets to a couple friends for them to go to. They don't have kids, so it wasn't a big deal for them. But that's my concern. Did the Seahawks make the right decision by requiring vaccines at Lumen Field?
Yeah, I think they did. I think I think that's the safest decision, and I totally understand why they made it. And I think that people will feel more comfortable in the stadium knowing that is in place. My problem, it's when we learned, we all should have known this, because if we were listening, we all would have known this, and you guys probably knew it, but people thought the vaccine was the cure. And when the information came out that even though you're vaccinated, you could still get it and you can still spread it, obviously you're much less likely to do those things without the vaccination. But the fact that the possibilities still exist has made it so much more difficult to argue for mandates and to defend mandates to people who are against them. It's just made it more difficult. And my problem is that while I absolutely agree they should be requiring vaccinations or negative tests, I just don't feel like enough people are in on trying to stop this that it helps nearly as much as it could. This is where it gets frustrating for me. Go ahead.
Sorry, I mean, we assume all of these measures are like, the teams are trying to cooperate with health officials and being cooperative and trying to be a good neighbor and good citizen of the country. I suspect on the cynical side, and this is to Zeb's point, I mean, hey, if it can break through anyway, why do it? I suspect the legal department's saying, you know what? It's the modern U.S. If somebody goes to a Seahawks game and this isn't required, and it wouldn't be that hard to prove like negligence if you didn't make the rule. If you say, hey, look, there's a communicable disease going around in the country, in the city, in everywhere the world, and it can be passed on by sharing the same air, it's airborne, and you literally didn't make any steps to fight it, and I got it in your stadium, like, you're just waiting for somebody with the right lawyer to make the lawsuit.
Totally a possibility. And I
think more than anything, it's like a legal maneuver to avoid liability.
Right.
If I'm being completely honest,
I'm looking at this from my perspective, where we've taken all these different measures along the way to try to stop this thing or slow it down. And every one of them, see, this is where the argument goes. Some people will say none of them worked. Why did we do that? It didn't work. My problem is, for every single one of these measures, if everybody had contributed and done it, it would have worked. All of them would have worked. But the fact is that we have enough people who are pushing back against any and all of these measures, these mandates, recommendations, whatever you want to call them, that they're just not nearly as effective as they could be. And unfortunately, that makes a lot of people throw up their hands and say, well, forget about it. I don't care then. Obviously there's nothing they can do about it going into a stadium where something's required, but just, in other facets of life. If nobody else is wearing their masks, why should I wear my mask? If this business is staying open, why should I close my business down? If only a certain percentage of people are actually following these guidelines, then the guidelines are virtually worthless. And that's the most frustrating part. I'm glad they're doing this, but in the grand scheme, how much does it really help?
I think that's a really fair question, because that is the biggest obstacle that we're running into, which is, this is not just a Seahawks fan issue. This is something that impacts so many people. So, did the Seahawks make the right decision by requiring vaccines at Lumen Field? Yeah, maybe not for the right reasons, not for the reasons that you or I like, but for overall, the net positive is that, one, they're going to avoid legal jeopardy. They're going to keep people safe, and they're going to be able to make money off of it. The negative is there are going to be people that are upset because they don't like the rules, regardless of what they're meant to do or how they're personally impacted, or, the idea that this is all of a sudden going to be like some big bad that they are going to lose opportunity access or whatever. There's nothing but I feel is a net positive. The Seahawks had to do this, though. I talked about this early in the year. I talked about this in the offseason. The Seahawks were not going to risk another year of not having fans at the stadium. The fact that this is the first time that we're going to play a regular season game with fans in the new Lumen Field, obviously it's a new name, that means a lot. The Seahawks were not going to risk that. They were not going to risk the revenue. They were not going to risk losing that access, because it's too valuable. It's too valuable to have fans in the stands to do what we expect them to do, which is make noise. So the Seahawks made the right decision. There are a lot of people that are not going to like it. There's not a lot that you're going to be able to do, but over 80% of the people in Seattle have been vaccinated. That is a very, very good thing. That is going to keep a lot of people more interested, which means that for fans in Seattle that have been vaccinated, they might feel more comfortable. The people that maybe live outside of the city and have strong issues about not being vaccinated or having to show their vaccination card, they can still watch the game at home. They lose out on the experience of attending a game in person, which is a great thing for the fans, for the community, for the region, for the city, and for the team itself. But that's a small sacrifice. And we've been going through this thing for 18 months. I don't know if people could put up with it much more if they didn't have these small things to look forward to. And this is just one thing, and I think the Seahawks did it right.
Yep, I agree.
Can I push back on one tiny point? I keep hearing like, well, it didn't work, or this point it didn't work. I mean, like, it does. It's just that it's all percentages, and I don't think people like to do math. Unlike me, I like to do math. And yeah, I get called an egghead and whatever. But the thing is, it's all probability. It's all percentages, and everything you do and everything you don't do and every action you take and whatever your action your neighbors take, it all affects the probability, and that affects the final outcome. So, for example, masks don't necessarily 100%, and your vaccine isn't going to absolutely stop it, but you've gone from a 60% chance of breakthrough here, then there's only a 60% chance of breakthrough there. Then instead of having a 60% breakthrough, now you've got a 36% chance breakthrough. It's all numbers. Yes, that means someone's going to have it's not anecdotes aren't evidence. It's all numbers, and it's too big, and the numbers are too big to evolve for even the human mind to even imagine it. And that's why you just have to do the math. If you want to do the math yourself, the numbers are available, and then find out. So if you've got 65,000 people and 100 people in there actually are contagious, and that should have spread to 180 people, but their neighbors actually have masks and they're vaccinated, instead of 180, that spreads to it spreads to about 68 people. Well, then that's a win. That's 68 people instead of 180 people who are now going to be contagious, and that's below your replacement value essentially. So, like, all these measures, none of them are perfect. There's no magic bullet. This isn't a movie. This isn't Contagion, where somebody invents the magic bullet inside through 6 months or a year and he passes it around. Everybody's amazing and it all goes back to normal. Nothing is that easy in real life. But everything helps. Every step, when you ventilate your room and you improve you discourage spreading by 25%, that's 25 more percent. And then you add that onto your 60% with your vaccine, you get on 50 to 60% with your mask. Now you're talking real help. And that's why countries that do that, like, Japan's never had a proper lockdown, but you know what? We've got less than 10% of the dead of you on half the population. Why? Because, like, we took it seriously. Everybody wears a mask. Everything's ventilated. Everybody, these numbers help. They really do. So if you're listening to this and you're hesitant, just get that 60% boost, man. Just get it.
Don't be the two offensive linemen that don't believe in the play.
Exactly.
Yeah. Trust the process. Trust the process. Trust the math. Again, it's like, go to our website, hawkscast.net, and PM me, and I will show you sources that you can trust. You don't have to trust the government. There's a million different universities throughout the world that are all literally throughout the world. They're all coming with the same numbers. Okay, so it's not a conspiracy. Undergrads in Buenos Aires are coming up with the same numbers as grad students in Beijing, who are coming up with the same numbers as private labs in Moscow, who are coming up with the same numbers as people in London. So this isn't a conspiracy. You don't have to trust the U.S. media. These are just numbers. It's just numbers. And you can look at them and you can do the math for yourself. And I will show you how to do it.
You don't think Soros is just paying all those people to come up with the same number?
No, I don't think. I don't think in 2021 you could have a modern conspiracy. Like, anybody can bet anything on the internet, right?
It's just not possible. Impossible.
I mean, go to WikiLeaks.
We're going to move on because topic number 4 actually still kind of wraps up this topic. So, topic number 4, Zeb, I'm going to ask you, is Carson Wentz COVID situation a cautionary tale for the NFL at large? For those of you that don't know, Carson Wentz and another handful of quarterbacks in the NFL have either been shut down because they've been in close contact, they aren't getting the vaccine, or they've actually contracted COVID before. So, is this a cautionary tale? Because a week ago, Carson Wentz was not able to practice. He's practicing. He's scheduled to start today. Should the NFL at large be worried about people like Carson Wentz impacting the game overall?
Yes. For sure, they should be. But I don't think it's worse than the situation last year, and we made it through pretty decently without too many hiccups. So, I think it'll be fine. Like they're testing these guys, going into the game. So it's not like we're gonna have a bunch of guys out on the field positive for COVID, spreading it all to each other. They're playing it very safely, as far as I know. So, I think it should be fine. We're gonna have situations. We're gonna have some. It's gonna happen. There's no way around it. Where some guys aren't able to go, or maybe a team can't go. They have to do rescheduling, and worst case scenario, somebody's gonna have to forfeit. I don't think we probably won't get to that point, but it's possible. So I think more the fact that people in high profile people like this are leaning on this. It's a personal decision type thing. Only helps to fuel that thought, that line of thinking, and makes it harder to sell this thing to people who have their doubts. I think that's an important factor. But overall, I expect that this NFL season should go along pretty well, at least as well as it did last year, which ended up being fine. So I think we'll be okay.
Ross, what about you? Do you think that Carson Wentz or anyone else in his same situation is a cautionary tale for the NFL?
For sure. For once, I think I disagree with Zeb on a topic that's not Michael Bennett. I mean, I think I have the exact opposite opinion. Looking at complexity theory, I think this season's going to be much worse than last year. Last year there was nobody in the stands. Now fans in the stands. Fans don't interact with players directly, but you know what? You're at a stadium. The stadium's got 68,000 people in it. There's air circulation systems. There's players who jump into stands. There's fans who run onto fields. There's people who get let in because their uncle's somebody's so and so, and they're on the field or they're on the sidelines, even if they're not supposed to be. There are going to be thousands and thousands more interactions every week, all week long, for each NFL team compared to last year. Teams aren't going to be as careful. People have gotten complacent. The teams are going to travel, and they're not going to lock them down in the bubble. Some teams have said they will, but not every team has said it. Maybe they're not going to be as smart. Maybe they're going to say it, but they're just a little bit more complacent because, hey, he just got tested the other day and he's vaccinated. So players are going to be out more while they're on their away games, and they're testing once a week, which is actually worse than anything I can think of, because you're going to test, for example, on Monday, and they're fine. But they become contagious by Tuesday, or by Thursday or Friday perhaps, and they play the game on Sunday, and they're contagious. They don't know it, and then Monday they get tested, and then they find out they've got it, and then everybody who just played in that game next to them the day before has been exposed, and sat on the bench next to them, and was on the van with them, and was on the team bus with them. That once a week testing is the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. And it will hurt this season way worse than the last season. Sorry to be the bummer.
You stole my thunder. That's what I was going to say as well. I think that Carson Wentz's situation is not the cautionary tale. It's the decision not to hold both vaccinated and unvaccinated players to the same testing requirements. Just for the reason that you outlined, Ross, testing once a week doesn't do enough to prevent the scare or the loss of a game based upon the numbers. Someone's crackling tables out there. But that I think is going to be the biggest downfall. So Carson Wentz's situation is definitely bad because, yeah, it's a quarterback and he's a high-profile player on the team and a position. And if they have their backup quarantined in another room, yeah, maybe they'll be okay. The NFL is not going to allow a situation where a game is going to get indefinitely postponed like they did last year, where Denver has to run out, the fifth string quarterback, which is actually like their special teams wide receiver. If that happens in this season, and I think there's a decent chance that it will, it is going to cause huge waves. But the problem is the NFLPA has already agreed to these rules, and they're not going to change it mid-season. There's just no way. So these are the rules that the teams are going to play with, and I hope it doesn't go bad. But Carson Wentz is just kind of like the tip of the iceberg in regards to what is basically looming out there for so many NFL teams. The fact that there's more than a quarter of the quarterbacks in the NFL that we know aren't vaccinated, that's a problem. That's potentially 16 games they could impact, or 8 games that they're going to impact, because that's half of the games that are going to be played in a given week. That's a huge number, and I don't think the NFL and the NFLPA really thought this through. They just made this decision when when they didn't look as bad, and things are not looking great because, like we talked about in the last segment, we're not doing everything collectively to get through this. We're the 2 linemen that decided this play is trash, and we're just not going to run it. We're going to do our own thing and expect it to work for some reason. So, Carson Wentz isn't the only one, but I do expect, things to go really poor this season, because it just takes one team, one training session, one air and exposure that people didn't expect. And like Ross said, testing vaccinated players once a week, that's not enough, because they can still catch it. And while their transmissions are, potentially lower than an unvaccinated person transmitting COVID, they still have to lock everything down. And that opportunity, if you have 10 players that aren't vaccinated on your team, they're shut down regardless of how many times they test. They just have to be shut out for 5 days. It is potentially a hot mess.
You guys are right. I'm just eternally the optimist.
No, I mean, there are reasons for optimism. I mean, once you've got a locker room with 52 out of 53 players vaccinated, again, the vaccine's not a complete block, but it's a healthy block. It's a strong block.
I think from a Seahawks perspective, Zeb, that the Seahawks, I anticipate, will handle this really, really well, because I feel like the Seahawks, they didn't lose anyone to a negative COVID test last year, so they did an amazing thing. And Pete really ended the season saying, the biggest thing that I'm concerned about is they're not going to be under our COVID protocols anymore, so we don't know what it's going to be like for them to be out there on their own.
Hopefully they're on their unofficial ones. I worry about the little sort of mini bye they're on right now.
Yeah.
What are they like? They've got a week and a half off right now.
Yeah, they're all going to show up on Sunday with COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
let's hope those vaccines work.
Yeah.
Hopefully they're smart.
Final thoughts of the NFL at large, and just kind of like the entire situation, especially with someone like Carson Wentz, who I want to point out, Carson Wentz has lost to the Seahawks 4 times. There's a fifth game, which is a playoff game, but in his 4 years, the Seahawks have played him almost every year. He has had a minimum of 2 turnovers and at least 1 interception in all of the games that he's played against Seattle.
Yeah, he's a bum.
So, and this includes his MVP year when he got injured. So, that's the actual Carson Wentz football topic for you. That's the
oh my God, Carson Wentz actually had won the MVP. Jesus. Has anybody fallen farther faster in the NFL recently?
No.
Robert Griffin, he fell pretty fast.
He did. That's a good call.
But yeah, I mean, it's for a completely
like RG3 won Rookie of the Year, right? When Russ should have won it, and then just dropped.
You could make the argument that Robert Griffin won his division, and at the time the NFC West was thought to be a little bit more competitive, even though the NFC West was obviously better. But
yeah, those 2, I guess that's sort of like the poster poster child for falling off the earth, huh?
Yeah.
I think Indianapolis is pretty legit. It's going to be a good game.
It should be an interesting game. We'll talk about this in the predictions. So let's move ahead. We got our predictions for you to wrap up the show. The opening line for this game was the Colts are favored by 2.5. The line has now moved 4.5 points in favor of the Seahawks. The Seahawks are now a 2-point favorite.
Was that what people thought that Wentz wasn't going to play, though?
It opened, but this is when the line first opened, that's when Carson Wentz wasn't potentially starting. But in that time, it's come out, but the line hasn't moved. I saw it go from Seahawks by 2.5. It's gone down to 2, but a majority of the money, according to Yahoo Sports, 75% of the money is on Seattle. Yeah. So with that, Ross, what's the final score? Seahawks at Colts.
19-17 Seattle.
Is that a safety in there, or just a lot of field goals?
There's a missed extra point, and so
Okay.
2 touchdowns, 2 field goals, but a missed extra point.
Okay.
I got there. I was working the math.
Zeb, what about you? What's your final score for the Colts, Seahawks at Colts?
38-22 Seahawks.
Ooh, that would be a nice, comfortable win. I would like to see this.
Sammy, do you have a pencil nearby?
I don't, but do you want me to actually write down the scores and we'll put it online?
Tony has strongly recommended that we hold ourselves accountable. We always compete, and he would like some predictions to be followed up on as the opening segment of the following week, and I think that's a cool idea.
All right. In honor of Tony, we are going to track our scores and our predictions, and we'll come up with a prize at the end of the year.
Maybe that'll be Birdfinger's job.
Okay. My final score, now that we're actually going to hold ourselves accountable, I'm going to go 24-17 Seahawks. We're just going to do score. We're not going to worry about any of these other predictions because that's too much work.
It's a reasonable score, though, Sammy.
Okay. Ross, over under 1.5 turnovers for Carson Wentz. Over. Zab.
Over.
I'm gonna go under. I think they're gonna limit him, and he'll only have 1. I don't think he'll get his second one. Ross, over under a half turnover for Mr. Russell Wilson.
Under.
Zeb.
Under.
I'm going to go over. I don't know what this offense looks like. I don't know if Russ is going to be able to beat a cover 2. So I'm going to say over. Maybe he forces a early throw into double coverage to DK and a tip pass.
Dude, if some 1992 cover 2 befuddles Russell Wilson for another game, I'm going to tear my hair out, and I don't have much. So
I'm just playing the odds. I'm playing the odds.
I'm just saying, like, that happened though. Like the ghost. I mean, I know he's not dead, but like the ghost of Tony Dungy just like completely stymies the Seahawks for the second half of the season. It's not a new defense.
Yeah,
run a seam route.
Agreed. All right, Ross. Over under 17.5 touches for Mr. Carson, Chris Carson.
Over.
Zeb.
Over.
I'm going to go under. Chris Carson only had 20 touches last year once. I don't know what the Shane Waldron offense is going to be like, so until I see that they're going to actually feature Carson Wentz, or Chris Carson, I'm going to say he's going to have under 17.5 touches.
Fair.
What? Dude, they're going to, like, hand it to him 16 times and throw it to him 4 times. He's going to catch 3. That's 19 touches. Write it down. Come on.
We'll see.
I was thinking.
Optimism.
Ross, then, of those 19 touches, who's going to score the first touchdown then?
First touchdown?
First touchdown.
Overall, total, like, of the
Anyone.
Jamal Adams.
Jamal
Jamal Adams. What? Strip sack, recover, touchdown. Oh my God, Carson, you're having a bad day to start the game. Carson Wentz.
Zeb, who's going to score the first touchdown?
Who's our backup? Who's our second tight end?
That would be Mr. Will Dissly. Uncle Will.
Uncle Will, then.
Uncle Will.
Oh, that's a good call. That's a good call too. I like that.
I think Russ wants to just air it out, so I'm going to call a DK to Russell Wilson to DK touchdown. That's going to be the first one.
Probably right. I was going to say Nick Bellore, but I just couldn't bring myself.
Oh, that would be great.
All right, he's got like double. Just keep playing both ways.
Yeah. So this is a perfect opportunity.
And he's a special teams captain.
Ross, who's going to get the first sack?
Dunlap.
That's a good one. Zeb.
Jamal
on his touchdown.
This is more wishful thinking. I don't think it's going to happen, but more wishful thinking. I think Bobby Wagner is going to flash. I think Bobby wants to show that he's still a top linebacker in this league, and I think a sack would be a really nice way to show.
Rolling his wheelchair between the guard and the tackle.
Yeah, just out of the blue. Ross, who's going to get the first turnover on the Seahawks?
Jamal Adams.
Jamal Adams with that strip sack. Fair.
Dude, he's got to earn his bucks now, doesn't he? There's a lot of pressure on Jamal. Got to perform, buddy.
Zeb, what about you? Who do you have getting the first turnover?
It's going to be Nino, man. Quandre Diggs.
Do you guys taking
that would make me really happy. I like all of Zeb's answers. Can I switch?
You guys, okay. This is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go. Alden Robinson gets a strip sack fumble. That's my guy.
I like it.
In what quarter?
He's gonna come and flash at the second drive in the third quarter.
I like that.
In the library with the candlestick.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, taking down. What was it, Professor Plum?
Yeah. All right. What is the first score going to be? Is it going to be an offensive touchdown, a passing touchdown, defensive touchdown, a field goal, a safety, a return for a touchdown? How are we going to score first?
I already told you, it's Jamal Adams on a strip sack.
First play? Wow, that would be great.
First drive.
Well, it's going to be
second play from scrimmage.
Will Dissly on an end around.
It's gonna be a passing touchdown. I think the Seahawks they're gonna want to release Russ and DK. I think that's the first touchdown. It's gonna be an offensive passing touchdown. And the final prediction.
Wait, hold on. I'm sorry to interrupt. I know we're going a little long, but if the first touchdown is Eskridge on a jet sweep, how many people would just wet themselves in glee?
I mean,
over under 100,000 people.
Yeah, I mean, jersey sales alone will go through the roof if he gets a touchdown.
Oh my God!
Is he wearing number 1?
He is now wearing number 1.
He's one. Efren Herrera's number. 2 great receivers.
The final prediction for the night, Ross. Who's going to be the surprise star for the Seahawks in this game?
Surprise star. Okay, we're gonna go a little bit weird here. We're gonna go Alex Collins. Even though I said Chris Carson's gonna do like vast majority of the carries. I think Penny gets a couple and does a little something, couple long runs.
Wait, Penny or Alex Collins?
Rashad Penny. Sorry, Rashad Penny.
Okay.
I was thinking Alex, but I shifted gears because I think they still want to trade Penny and they want to showcase it.
Okay.
I can't believe they didn't trade him to the Ravens.
Yeah. Lost opportunity.
Ravens
Well, he's hurt, so
yeah.
He's always hurt, but like he could still run. It's mostly just his ego that's hurt.
I'm gonna go with DJ Dallas.
DJ Dallas, that's not a bad one. My surprise star is going to be the 3-way player. It's going to be Nick Bellore. He's not going to do a whole bunch, but he's just going to be involved enough on offense, blocking, on defense, in a spot play here and there, and then on special teams coverage. So he's just going to do it all. And gentlemen, that is our show for today. We're ready to kick off the season.
I have one more aside.
Oh, Ross has got another one for us.
All right, you saw the captains were announced, right? And
I did not.
There's no surprise if there's like Russell. Like this, some teams have up to 6 captains. Seahawks have 3 captains. The offensive captains: Russell Wilson, And on defense, of course, it's Bobby Wagner. And on special teams, it's Nick Ballore, who's in his 11th year, which I didn't realize. Those are all pretty, like, conventional. That's elected by the players. That's great. So Miami, I know it's not a Seahawks thing, but I just got to talk about this real quick. Miami elected their team captains. Okay. Last year, their team captain on offense was Ryan Fitzpatrick, who went to Harvard. This year, of course, Ryan is now up with Washington. And so who did they elect as their offensive captains, do you think? Not Tua.
It's not Tua, for sure.
Not Tua. They did not. It's some guard and some wide receiver I've never heard, like Hollis or something. It's not even like their main people. They're not even good people. And it's not Tua. Like, their teammates didn't elect. Now, if you've got Tua on any of your fantasy teams, I would say drop him now. Like, it's not the end-all, be-all of signs, but when your teammates don't elect your quarterback as the captain in the second year, it doesn't mean nothing.
That's a little weird, isn't it?
It doesn't mean nothing. It means especially in contrast where last year it was Fitzpatrick.
You know what it is?
Right?
I bet the entire team thought they were trading for Deshaun Watson and didn't want to put Tua in the position.
Well, that's the other side of the thing. Like last week they thought they were like, so you've put Tua forward as your quarterback. Last week the team itself was trying to trade for Deshaun Watson, and then this week his teammates don't elect him.
Yep.
So, like, no offense, but that's smells like bust.
Yeah, writing's on the wall potentially on that one.
That's not good.
Yeah,
I don't want to read too much into it, but at the very least, like he's not getting invited to a lot of birthday parties.
Well, there goes my fantasy season.
Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway, that's my last aside for the day. Let's do our shout outs, man.
All right, time for some shout outs, gentlemen.
One sad shout out. Rest in peace, Seahawks.net.
Had a good run.
It was a good 20 some odd years, but now it's
1998 to 2011. It was a good run.
New ownership changes.
Yeah. I have shout outs. I have shout outs to the Prime Minister of Japan for bowing out. You failed. Now get out. Thank you for leaving. Wish we were going to elect somebody better, but we're not. I think also shout outs continue to the people in the offices around making those hard choices, like to require the vaccinations to come to stadiums, because they're going to get, there's no right decision, but they're going to get plenty of backlash. So congratulations on that, making a couple hard choices. I think I'll leave it there.
Yeah. Shout out to the chat. Shout out to Birdfinger, Alusher, and to Matt for chiming in and checking us out live. Check us out at Twitter at Seahawks Podcast, at Seahawks Forum. Go to hawkscast.net. We have a lot of great topics talking about the season. We're really excited. The football is here. A lot of great topics in the Seahawks chat, in the roundtable, in the outhouse. Go check it out, hawkscast.net. With me is Zeb and Ross. We are the hawkscast.net podcast, and we wish you all a Go Hawks.
Go Hawks!
Go Hawks!